But for today, something I want to dig into with you is just really thinking about this role of HR and people leaders and why we're sometimes not seen as this true organizational partner. And I want to dig into what that actually means and talk more about that today. But let's start there. Why do you think HR leaders often struggle to be seen as true partners by the rest of the leadership team?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple bigger buckets that'll answer this. Unfortunately, I think it starts with perception. I think the perception to this day that the function overall is overly administrative. I think with the overall value still being that this function helps get people in, and when we're ready as an org to get them out, which is such a short change of what the function and what the actual art of the talent, people, and culture role actually is. I also think that with that perception, it's a historical perception. So it's really hard to battle against maybe the individualized perception that might exist in an organization that you or I might be in that same seat versus if we think about media, TV, movies, how are we actually perceived even in those fictional lanes? And it's all still very administrative. I think there's an actual interesting piece too that sometimes I feel like I'm going to get canceled by our people in the industry, but it has to do with value and business acumen. I think it's twofold. There's a perception that those in the seats of people and culture, talent, HR, they don't actually have strong business acumen. And that cuts both ways. Sometimes it's true. And that's why I think I'm on cancel alert. But sometimes it is true. Sometimes it's true. Now, with that being said, there are a few things that we can do about this. The first is brush up on our business acumen. I know a number of leaders where they do love having that hard line of, I don't have to worry about the ops. I don't have to worry about the finances. I don't have to worry about what's actually happening in the industry at large because I only deal with our people here internally. Not great, but it does add to those perceptions. So when if the individual's even lucky enough, I say that facetiously, but lucky enough to be on the senior leadership team. If we're having really hard decisions about things like, layoffs, oftentimes those individuals are brought in at the tail end of, we have made this decision. How are we going to do it? They should be in the beginning of those conversations of what are we actually considering? What are the perspectives that we, as the rest of the team, are missing? And as that people and culture person, they should really have their finger on the pulse. I think if nothing else, every senior leader team needs to have someone be the ears, eyes, the mouth of objectivity. And oftentimes that's not the person in the people and culture seat. And that is wild to me. But like I said, it cuts both ways. If we have not exhibited that we understand the overall business, or at least that we're thinking about the overall business beyond just the people, if we only sound like the bleeding heart, then I understand why there are times where we're just not invited to the table in the way that we should be, and why our teams aren't getting the real value of having our expertise in making really critical and strategic decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big mindset shift that happened for me personally when I moved from kind of the director level in HR to more senior leadership levels was really thinking about the business. I was I cannot develop these solutions without the business lens. And maybe before I was doing very individual contributor tactical work, but that real shift, it took me understanding what is our business? What does our business do? What's our space in the competitive landscape? And now I do things I look at just our business from financial perspective, but I also look at our business from an industry perspective. Where are we in the industry? How do we compare to our competitors? What does this mean? I even seek out those leaders in those organizations as thought partners to me too. Because I think a lot of times we view ourselves in competition with people who are our competition. But for HR, you can actually learn from them. They're probably dealing with the same things you're dealing with internally.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I also think that, to your last point, benchmarking is probably one of the strongest tools that we have in business in general, but particularly for HR people. I mean, what's the market doing? What's the market saying? What are others seeing before potentially we see it, or vice versa is really important and valuable. But even for that internal lens, I understand as someone who's been fortunate enough to be in senior leadership positions and coach them, consult with them, so on and so forth, that if you need to make really critical decisions very quickly, unfortunately, you are going to pick and choose who needs to be in that room if you believe they're going to drive value or not drive value. So again, if we're not showing up with that same lens that you, obviously in your own maturation as a great practitioner, if you're not showing up with that lens, or at least showing that you can step into those roles, then that's another reason why we're not invited to the table.
Yeah. I just always want to be at that table. So I'm like, how can I be better? How can I be smarter? Yep. How can I know more? And it's interesting, when I took this role at Workweek, I did ask the CEO directly, like, are you interested in teaching me how the business operates? Because I think the best HR leaders out there, the best ones, honestly, I'm sorry if this hurts anyone's feelings, but they understand their organization in and out. I have to know what each team does. I have to understand their scope of work. It actually helps me better predict like hiring and headcount needs. It helps me predict challenges they might face. I have to understand how the teams all work together, how a product comes to be, because I think that actually puts me in a better position to be successful as a people leader. But I think so often we don't do that work. We're like overwhelmed by everything we're doing that we don't do that work. And so when you take on these jobs, I just ask, like, when you're onboarding to a new organization, really spending the first 2 weeks being like, what do I need to know? Meet everyone you can meet, understand all their problems before you start getting into like the grind of HR work. I think starting there could be really helpful. I just also
totally
I love knowing everything. I love knowing everything. I'm like, I want to be in the know. I'm nosy.
I mean, you kind of have to be in the role. Kind of have to be in the role.
I think so. Listen, curiosity is one of my 3 values. I have 3. Curiosity is number 1. It means I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And I also just think as HR leaders, if we approach everything with the curiosity, you are going to learn so much more. You have to open up your mind to that. So I think like that plays a big role in like how we could be struggling to be seen by the rest of the leadership team.